Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to my channel. So I have a video idea for today that, to be quite honest with you, is probably a bad idea, but recently I've been seeing, recently as in the last kind of couple months, I've been seeing Jack Edwards post a lot of videos kind of like about his bookshelves, like how he's organizing them, like read versus unread books in his collection, etc. And so I've been thinking about how I want to organize my shelves as well, and maybe just changing it up a little bit and doing alphabetical order or something like that. But in the meantime, before I change too much, I thought I could do a video like Jack where I see how many of the books on my shelves I've actually read. And that's why this is quite possibly just a bad idea, because this could be very embarrassing for me, firsthand and secondhand, because you guys are probably going to see the results of this and just know what a problem I have, basically. And so in a way, I thought this could be very good at self-imposing a book buying ban on myself. But I'm actually also just really interested to see how I do, just because I think the last time I did something like this, I didn't make a video out of it, I just counted myself, and I had read around 58% of the books I own, which at that point was better than I thought it was going to be. But I think that more recently I've been really bad for the amount of books I've been buying. So we're really I have no idea what the result is going to be. I also have no idea how many books I actually own. I think it might be in the 450 to 500 range, but I'm just as interested as the rest of you to see how this turns out, and we're gonna go shelf by shelf. There are some books that I just have in piles in the living room that are more of either recent hauls or Ben's books and stuff, so we're gonna go through those too. Some of them haven't been strictly shelved yet, but aside from that, I'm gonna go shelf by shelf and see what the numbers tell me. Okay, so the first shelf that we have is this little display of books that I have under my TV stand. And the lighting over here is probably a little bit weird just because it's a very rainy day outside and I don't have a big overhead light in this section of the room. But regardless, what I want to do over on the rest of my shelves is sort of a visual representation of what I've read versus what I haven't read, like what Jack did in his video, which I will have linked, by the way, because this visual thing is not my own idea. But I'm not going to do it here just because it's just it's so few books and this is not really one of my shelves. So I'm just going to count. But basically we have a total of 6 books in this pile, 4 books, so 10, 14 total on this shelf. And this is not going to be a good one because this shelf has been set up more for the sake of aesthetics than anything. And I could be wrong, but I don't think I've read a single one of these. So if cats disappeared from the world, no. Winnie the Pooh. Okay, technically, to be fair, I have read Winnie the Pooh. Just not recently. I read it a lot as a child, so I guess I can count that. But She and Her Cat, Lives of Girls and Women, Severance, Alone with You in the Ether. Yeah, I have not read any of these, so I was right. So basically we're gonna have 1 read and 13 unread. And when I get to some of the other shelves, it's going to be easier just because when I turn the books around, there's going to be a visual indication like I mentioned. But this one I'm just going to leave as is because it has so few books and because it's not worth it anyway. I've read one of them. So you can just imagine that this is not the best for me, but this is where we started. So the start is not going to be strong, and the reason for that is because now we're going to move on to the miscellaneous piles of books I have in the living room, and the next one we're going to move on to is basically books that Ben left here with me that are his books, and I guess technically they are our books and my books too now, but to be realistic about it, I haven't really considered them as books belonging to me. I've kind of still considered them as books belonging to him, and they have not been a focus. And also this pile was only left here about a month ago, so still pretty recent. Okay, so honestly, I'm not even gonna hold up the pile of books that Ben left because there are 9 of them and I've read 0 of them. And I'm not surprised by that because I know I haven't touched them. So it's just 9 unread there. But the books that I have hauled recently, I do have a big old pile of them. So there are 12 books here, and I've read 1 of them. I've read Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead, which just came out, and that's all. So for the miscellaneous living room piles, I have read 1 book out of 21. So 1 read and 20 unread. Okay, so to be completely honest, that first part is probably enough of a reason for me to go on a book buying ban because you can see how many books that I've recently hauled that I literally just have sitting in my living room that aren't even on my shelves yet because I need to rework how I'm going to organize my shelves. But we move. So I'm gonna do these 2 shelves as a whole because I'm considering this one shelf as a unit. This is basically my literary fiction on the top, and this is currently organized in alphabetical order. And then this is classics. Then I have a few more down here on the bottom shelf that you can't see. This bottom shelf is sort of a mess where it's not really completely books. I also have like some binders and some like old lab notebooks and like other stuff basically that I like from school and everything. It's not strictly like novels, although I would like it to be, so I'll probably be cleaning that up. But I'm just gonna turn my, am I turning my read books around or my unread books around? I'm gonna turn the books that I've read around so that the ones that you can still see the spines of are the unread ones. And I'm gonna cut to that when I'm done. So we'll be able to see and count once I turn the books around. Okay, so this one's actually not as bad as it could be. I'm surprisingly doing better with classics than I am with litfic, but then to be fair, a lot of the classics I've had for a lot longer. Like I've been collecting some of them since high school, like before I really started my book collection and it exploded and everything. I've had some of these, like some of the Jane Austen and like Emily and Charlotte Bronte, etc. But the litfic is a lot more of a recent development that I've started to collect some of that. So it's not as surprising that I haven't read as many of them. But since I did this entire shelf as a unit, what I came up with is there is a total of 83 books on these 2 shelves, and then there are 5 on the bottom. And I have read 37 of them, and I have not read 46 of them. So obviously that's still not in my favor, but it's honestly not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And there are a few of these books that I have in my immediate reading plans. Like I want to read Notes on an Execution very soon. There's even a bookmark in it. I'm planning to read Rebecca very soon. And like there are, I don't know, I'm eyeing them. And a lot of these books are also shorter. They're easier to fit in than bigger fantasy books are. So that's the verdict for this first shelf over here. And now we're gonna move on to my big shelves. Okay, so what I would like to do for this is I'm gonna go level by level across the whole thing. So shelf 1 is going to be like all of this, shelf 2 is going to be all of this, etc. You get it, pretty simple. So same thing, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to turn the books that I have read around so that the pages face out. And after I do each shelf, we will do the math and I'll tell you how I'm doing. Okay, so let's be honest, this shelf looks pretty pathetic. These 2 books are both copies of Little Women, so even though it technically counts as 2 read on that shelf, it's really only 1 book. These Ali Smith books, this was like, they had the entire collection at Value Village, and they're just such beautiful hardcovers that I figured I may as well buy the whole series at once, because like, I cannot express to you how all 5 of them cost less than one like regular hardcover would if you bought it new from Indigo. So that's an easy way to shrink the level of read books on a shelf right there. But I have read only 4 books on this shelf. But Don't Fear the Reaper was a pretty recent purchase because I was waiting for it to come out in paperback so that it would match my copy of My Heart is a Chainsaw. The Jacqueline Carries were also a recent find at a used bookstore, etc. So there's some fantasy here that I'm really excited about too, and then literary fiction just spills a little bit onto this shelf, but not my best representation. However, nonfiction was actually better for me than I thought. Like, still a total of 51 books on these shelves. I've only read 19 of them, and I have 32 unread, but like, the vast majority of the read books are on this shelf. Like, this is a pretty good showing here with only 4 books that I have not read. And then over here, we actually have like a fair amount of books that I've bought more recently, like The History of the World in Bite-Sized Chunks, A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, Braiding Sweetgrass, Transgender History, The Rise and Reign of the Mammals. Those are all books that I've bought like since the summer. So this lends more to my theory that I've been bad with book buying recently. And this is like supporting my self-imposed book ban. Okay, next up we have a little bit more of a fantasy heavy shelf. This looks a little bit more on brand for me. I think I might do better on this one, but we'll see. I will cut to the result. Okay, so this looks better. We have our first official shelf where I've actually read more than half of the books on the shelf. This one is better than this one, but to be fair, on this shelf over here, we have like an entire series I haven't started yet, an entire series that I haven't started yet. So this is kind of to be expected. Like, I am planning to begin Malazan, but not until I'm finished with Realm of the Elderlings, for example. So these are in my plans. They're not books that I've been neglecting. However, this is embarrassing. I really, really need to finish the Broken Earth series, and I need to read the Emberblade because this has been on my shelf for quite a while. These ones that I haven't read on this shelf, to be fair, I have had them for quite a while and I should be getting to them, but as a verdict, on this shelf there are 39 books. I've read 24 of them and there are only 15 yet to be read. So that is a much better ratio than we've seen so far, and hopefully I can continue on that trend where we're doing a little bit better. So since this camera level is good for this shelf as well, I'm just gonna move right on to this one, turn them around, and then we will have a look. Okay, this shelf also looks pretty good for me, but this is kind of funny just because, like, once you get into the fantasy books, they're definitely chunkier. So these are the shelves that'll show up like fewer books read, but possibly like the most pages out of any, because the Sanderson shelf especially, like, the Stormlight Archive, like, yeah, I've been slacking on Mistborn Era too, but the Stormlight Archive for 4 books possibly represents just like the most possible pages in that amount of space on any of my shelves anywhere, barring possibly Wheel of Time, but even then, Stormlight Archive basically blows everything else out of the water. Malazan could also represent that number of pages, but these are pretty crazy. So the Sanderson shelf as a whole, like, even though there's not as many books on it, definitely the most number of pages read, I think. So this is the best one yet because there are a total of 36 books on this shelf as a whole, but I've only not read 8 of them. So I'm getting into the Age of Madness trilogy in the new year. So once again, we have a situation where this is a series that I just haven't started yet, but it's fully in my plans. And then on this side of the shelf, like I mentioned, I do need to be getting to Mistborn Era 2, but it's just not like, to be totally honest, it's not a priority for me right now. I'm way more excited about Stormlight 5 and Arcanum Unbounded. Like, so Dawn Shard I'm saving for my reread of Stormlight. I will slip it in then, just because it has been so long since I read Rhythm of War. And Arcanum Unbounded, I don't feel like I can turn that around, just because I've read stories from it, but I don't think I've read more than half of that book. But even with that being said, and that being the situation, this is by far the best representation, and this shelf also features just some of my favorite series. This is an all-star shelf right here, with the exception of Robin Hobb, but you know, she gets her own just because there are so many of those books. But yeah, moving on to the next shelf. Sometimes I lose track of like how tall I'm gonna be compared to my camera, so hopefully you can see me, but we are now on this shelf here. So this one is a toss-up. I think I'm gonna do well, but we're gonna see, and I will flip to it once I have flipped the books. Honestly, flipping around books that I have in like horizontal stacks is so hard and so annoying. I love the way it looks as a display, but whenever I have to move them or even just like get a book to read, I'm so annoyed that I've done it that way. But I'm not gonna stop because it saves space and I do love the way that it looks. But anyway, this shelf is, I don't know, this is a good representation over here because this is Hobb. This shelf is a little bit more of a mixed bag, but let's count. Okay, so overall still pretty good because there's a total of 40 books on this shelf and I have read 27 of them, and there are 13 that remain to be read. The two that are kind of embarrassing are Name of the Wind and The Rage of Dragons. Rage of Dragons more so than Name of the Wind, because the reason I say it about both of them is that these are two of the books that I have owned for the longest. They were two of the very first books that I purchased with like BookTube's influence, with people talking about their favorite fantasy series, but I decided pretty early on that I wasn't going to read Name of the Wind unless there was another book released or like the finale released, because it's not like Game of Thrones where I was reading it as a teenager. I was reading it around when Winds of Winter was expected to release, so like I couldn't have known the situation I was getting myself into. But with a series like Name of the Wind, where I do know what the situation is and how long it's been, I don't really want to voluntarily start that. So that's kind of the situation there. And Rage of Dragons, I don't have that excuse because Evan Winter is, like, he finished his series, so he's fine. I don't really know. I think it's just because I've heard mixed things about it that's prevented me from picking it up all this time, but I really should get to Rage of Dragons somewhat soon, because like if I like it, then that'd be fantastic, and if I don't, then I can finally know and I won't have to wonder for like 3 more years. But as a whole, this shelf, like the primarily Robin Hobb shelf, should basically be finished in the next month and a half, because I have 2 books left in the main timeline, Realm of the Elderlings, and with the buddy read that we have going, there'll be one in November and one in December, and then that'll be it, which feels absolutely crazy because it's been such a long road. Okay, so big change up of camera angle to do these bottom 2 shelves, but they are just close to the ground, so what are you gonna do? I honestly think that these are more of a toss-up as well. We've probably gotten through most of the shelves where I will do my best, like numbers-wise, but I'm still probably gonna do okay down here just because there are some series that I have finished, but we'll see. I also think that there are more books on this shelf because I think that on the whole they're a little bit shorter than like the Sandersons or the Hobbs, so let's just get right to it. Okay, so this is a more interesting shelf and one where I did some girl math, which is basically the fact that I have the bind up of Long Price Quartet over there, so I have counted it as 4 books read and 4 books on the shelf because it is a 4-book series, even though it's technically only one physical book. But In the case of my bind up of the books of Earthsea, I have not turned it around because I've only read one of them, but I have counted one read book and 4 unread books on my like tally. So that's my that's my girl math. But basically that all of that is to say that there is a total of 52 books on this shelf, and I have read 31 of them. So once again, more than half, but not nearly as good as the previous few. But there are definitely some series like Wall of Storms I'm planning to get to pretty soon. I really should continue in the Tide Child trilogy. And then actually A Court of Thorns and Roses I'm planning on picking up very soon as well, because I'm being #influenced. Like everybody at work is reading ACOTAR basically, and I have FOMO. Essentially. Like I did plan to read it obviously since I bought the book, but I'm just like right now at this exact moment feeling the FOMO. So I'm gonna pick that one up real soon. Okay, so the bottom shelf might be harder to see because I do have to sit somewhere while I do this according to the laws of physics, but I have a feeling that it's gonna be okay over here, and then it might fall off the wagon a little bit over there just because I feel like there's a lot of romance that I've bought recently that I've been really interested in, and I just haven't actually gotten to a lot of romance in the past couple of months. So this one could be worse, but let's do it. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, the shelf as a whole is actually much better than I thought it would be. We have a total of 53 books, and I've read 37 of them, and then I have 16 unread. However, when you consider like this kind of corner here that's sort of behind me, I have my copies of Harry Potter from when I was a kid. I have like my John Green. I have stuff like that. So it's kind of like, of course I've read those. Like I read those when I was a teenager type of thing. However, they still are books on my shelves that I have read. It takes time to read books and to create a collection. So they still remain as books that I've read, but it's just a little bit more biased to like things I've read a long time ago. And then when you get further into the romance shelf, like the ones that I have not yet read are more likely to be like books that I've basically bought this year or like within the past year and a bit and haven't gotten to yet. However, I do like to balance the way that I read romance and just throw one in here or there, because I do almost always find myself finishing a romance book in like 2 or 3 days and trying to make it last, but also just like flying through it anyway. And that's just kind of like the way that I read romance. So I kind of just leave them until I'm in the mood, and then I know that I can get through it pretty quickly. Okay, so the next thing we have on the agenda is the book cart, and I kind of think that no matter what I do, I can't get the camera to see all 4 layers of it, but at least right now we can do 3 layers of it, and I am counting the whole thing as one entity, so I'm just gonna go ahead and flip what books around that I can. Sometimes with the levels it makes it hard to take books in and out, so I will try my best, and then we will flip to where we can count them. Okay, so this is kind of ironic because the levels that you actually can see on the camera, this one looks okay for me, but it doesn't look great. However, the book cart as a whole just barely goes in my favor. With a total of 43 books, I have read 22 of them, and I have yet to read 21 of them. So this bottom shelf is a lot of Agatha Christie and then some Michael Crichton as well. And there's also a collection of Edgar Allan Poe poems and short stories, which I decided to count as having read it just because with all of those being separate entities in there, I've read more than half of them, so I decided that I could count that for myself. And a lot of the Agatha Christie novels I have read as well. This is sort of like my historical fiction section right here. I've read most of that, and these are all like fairly recent within the past year. And then the top two shelves are the ones that don't look as good, but kind of got some classic fantasy here, Witcher. Perdido Street Station was actually not even my purchase, it was Ben's purchase, so I'm not 100% sure whether I'm interested in that book or not, but it certainly is massive. And then up here is more like thriller horror, and these are all books that I'm very interested in, but I've just been like slowly making my way through these particular ones. Okay, so this shelf as a whole as well, like 1, 2, 3, I'm also counting as one singular entity, and I'm going to let you know right now that down here is the Wheel of Time. So there are automatically 15 books here that I know that I've read, and I'm just quite frankly not going to take the time to turn every single Wheel of Time book around. I don't need to do that in order to know that I've read the whole series, and it just seems pointless. So this bottom shelf is not really going to come into camera, but we also have my Terry Pratchett here, and we have His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, which I have not yet read. And the Terry Pratchett, I have read most of it, but not quite all of it. So it's still going to be reflected in the numbers, but I'm just not, it's so hard to get these bottom shelves in camera, and especially while representing this whole shelf, I don't think that the camera is quite like wide enough or that it's just gonna work well. So I'm sacrificing this, but just because it has Wheel of Time on it, I already know what has happened with that. I have read it. So I'm gonna proceed to flip this part and we'll see how that turns out. Okay, so as it turns out, on this shelf as a whole, Wheel of Time kind of saves me because there's a total of 56 books on these 3 levels, and I have read 35 of them, and I have not read 21 of them. So well, it honestly doesn't even make sense to say this because I have read them, so it doesn't change reality. But if you take away 15 of those books, then you're left with 20 read and 21 unread. I mean, it's all about the way that I organize my shelves, right? I could, by chance, have organized an entire shelf that I have read none of, which is basically what has happened here. And the reality is that a lot of this is like thriller and horror, and while I like thrillers, it's more of a recent development for me, like I want to say since the spring, of buying and reading more horror. Like this is not something that I have read a ton of at all, and so this is sort of like the collection that I've amassed of things that I've been interested in, also sort of like with the top of the book cart, where I've just been slowly making my way through them, and I've read probably like 6 to 8 horror books like since the summer, or since like July until now, and because there was Summerween in July, and then now it's like it's spooky season, so I've been trying to read some of that. And then some of my horror I even have kind of shelved in literary fiction, like Bunny by Mona Awad, for example. That could definitely be over here, and I've read that. So it's all about the representation. Also, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom have sprayed edges, so they don't even look like I turned those around, but those are 2 red books right there. So yeah, we have a lot more recent purchases here, and I was not expecting this to be very well read for me. Like we have 3 out of like what I probably have 11 that aren't read or something like that. 5, 10, yeah, 11 that are not read. 3 that are, but this is the type of thing where I'm kind of in my horror thriller mood and era, so I'll be working on this. And then the fantasy has a better representation for me of being read versus unread, which is really not shocking because that's what I've been reading most of for the past few years. So not altogether surprising, but I am pleasantly surprised, honestly, that this shelf has more read than unread, just because I knew that this part wasn't going to go so well for me. And of course, these books are shorter, so there are more of them that are unread that can fit in the same amount of space as like 6 Wheel of Time books. You get like 11 of these. But anyway, it's time to do the final tally, and I will let you know what the overall number is of the number of books I own, the number of books I've read, and the number of books I have not read. I'm kind of scared. Okay, so after all of that, my total number of books in my possession is 478, which holy crap. But also, like, it's crazy because seeing Jack Edwards do his video, he has more shelves than me, but not by that much. And I think it just goes to show, because he owns like over 1,000 books. I think it just goes to show the difference in page count and just in stats in general, in like sort of lit fic and classics and nonfiction, etc., versus fantasy, where fantasy just has like these massive page counts, and it's one of the things I love about it. I'm not complaining, but I think it's just crazy to see the difference in the amount of books that you can fit on a shelf. Like, a couple of these shelves only have like 30 books on them total across, like, well, maybe not 30, but 40 or in the 40s across a whole one of these. And I'm pretty sure Jack Edwards in just one shelf of this size has like more than 40 books, or around 40. So it is kind of crazy just to see that, like, I own 478 books, which is a lot, but it's just insane to think about how many more you could fit just if you're reading shorter books. Now, the other thing, the final verdict, is that I have read 262 of the 478 books that I own, and I have not read 216 of them. So that's a hell of a lot. Like, 216 books still left to read at my current pace is like 3 years of reading. I read like 70 to 80 books a year, and to be fair, some of these books are not fantasy, they're shorter, so the representation is different. I could definitely read more of those shorter books in a year, so maybe we call this like 2 years of reading for me, but even still, like, when you consider that, that's kind of crazy. However, that stat does add up to 55% read. I have read 55% of the books that I own, and to be honest, when I started this video, I was really just hoping that it was gonna be more than half. So I don't know if this is a win exactly, but it's not a failure. That's what I'm chalking it up to. It's not a failure. I've read more than half, and I think this means that I am on a semi-book buying ban, which maybe I should just be on a book buying ban, but like, let's be real, I will struggle with that a lot. So I think that I'm still allowed to buy a little bit of books, just a little, but only if I need them. Like, if they're the next book in a series or something, or if they're an author I love and a book I've had my eye on for a while. See, this is the kind of book buying ban that I really should be on, is like, I'm not allowed to buy books that I just saw for 2 seconds and then decided that I wanted them. I need to have like wanted them for a little while and be convinced that I actually want them, instead of like just complete impulse purchase vibes. I don't even know. I hope that you enjoyed this, because I don't know what the point of this was if I'm still gonna buy books, but we know that I'm still gonna buy books, like, let's be real about it. But I'm still glad that I did this, because I like to know these stats, like knowing how many books I own, and the fact that I'm still doing okay about reading at least an equal amount of what I'm bringing in versus what I'm actually getting done. So, not the worst outcome. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and if you've done it, or if you like know your stats, like if you actually keep track of them rather than having to do a big thing like this. I'd be really interested to hear what your home libraries are like and what your kind of goals are for that kind of thing. I think that it would be really cool if I could get my stats up to like 60 or 65%. I think that that would be a big improvement for me, and maybe if I really cut down on the buying and focus on the reading, I can do it. So this actually took me quite a long time. This took me like more than an hour and a half, but I am happy with what I have done, and that is it for today's video. So please do like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more from me, and as always, I have my Discord with Ben and socials linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!